PD Movie recently reached out and asked if I'd be interested in checking out their new Remote Air 3 focus system. I'm super excited about this system, and before we jump into what comes with it, let me know what you guys think of this look. I'm using kind of an interesting vintage lens. Hopefully it's not too soft, but at any rate, let's talk about what will come in the box if you pick up this system. So there's actually several options, but the one I'm using here is the Remote Air 3, which comes with the remote itself and a spare marker ring, 2 different motor modules, a bunch of cables to connect everything together, 2 antennas and 2 spare antennas, and finally 2 19mm to 15mm rod collars or adapters. So the system I have here has 2 motor modules. You can purchase this with a single motor module if you only are going to be changing your focus. What's nice about having 2 is you can change your focus and your iris, so change your exposure with the remote. And finally, if you have a cinema zoom, you can get this kit that comes with 3 motors. Then you're able to control focus, iris, and zoom all with a single remote. So pricing wise, we're looking at around $1,000 for a single motor kit, $1,600 for a dual motor kit, and finally $2,000 for a 3 motor kit. And of course, you can mix and match and work your way up to a 3 motor by starting with 1 or 2. When it comes to the build quality of these things, these different pieces of the kit, things are great. First of all, you have lots of spares. So this disc here is actually glow in the dark, which is pretty sweet. And if it gets gummed up from use with markers and things, you can just swap it out for the spare that it comes with. They're invertible, and it's built like a tank. All this stuff is aircraft aluminum, multiple mounting points. Really happy with the build quality on all this. The thing that really stuck out to me about this system, because there are so many wireless systems now, is the ease of use. Really, it's about setting the channels across everything together, and then everything's just color coded. You set each motor to a specific color, you set the knobs and little rockers on the controller to those colors, and you're done. There's also combinations where you double tap, triple tap, quadruple, and more taps to change functions. We'll get into all that here in a second, but first I just want to go over basic setup. To get the system all set up, we're going to need some kind of 15mm rod setup. You don't have to go crazy here. I just use a single rod off of my camera cage. Take your 2 motors and slide them onto the 15mm rod and connect them to the lens. Quick little side note, another thing I love about this system is once you have the motors attached, if they're not turned on, you can still easily change your focus and iris with the lens itself, and the motors won't fight you at all. So you can turn the system off and leave everything set up, but still have manual focus, and then when you're ready for wireless, you just turn everything on. With the motors all set up with the lens, the next thing is to run all the cables. Start with the power cable going into your 2nd or 3rd motor. You can't plug it into the motor with the little OLED screen. We'll be using a daisy chain cable for that. You can use a D-tap power supply coming from something like a battery plate or V-mount battery, or you can purchase a 12-volt adapter and use any 12-volt power supply. Next, take the short daisy chain cable and connect the 2 motors together. Now we can turn the motors on by holding the power button on the bottom for a few seconds until the LED lights or OLED screen turns on. To power up the remote, simply hold the power button on the side and the remote will power up, giving you battery life and a bunch of other information. Fun side note, this remote has a built-in battery and you can charge it over USB, and this battery lasts forever. With everything powered on, we need to make sure that the remote and the motors are on the same channel. You only need to do this once for the entire life use of this thing, which is great. So go ahead and change the channels on either the remote and or the motors to match. In my case, I'm going to be using channel 16. Next, we need to map each motor to a control on the remote. The remote can control 3 motors at once, but you can optionally connect even more. So in theory, you could control several different cameras all at the same time. But in this example, we have 2 motors, so I'm going to choose the focus motor and map it to the focus knob. And the iris motor, my 2nd motor, I'm going to map map that to the iris rocker on the side of the remote. This is super simple to do. All you have to do is pick a color. For focus, I'm going to be using red. So tap the power button on the motor 5 times and keep doing that until you get to color red. And do the exact same process but on the remote using the focus button. And once they match, you're done. Do the same thing for the iris, and in my case, I'm going to be using blue. So now we're ready to run through our auto calibration. That's what I love about this system. There's no file management to save a bunch of lens programs and all kinds of things. Every time you turn it on, it can run through a really quick auto calibration, and then it's perfectly ready to go for any lens that you throw at it right away. So to do this, we have everything powered up. We're all on the same channel. We're gonna pick what we wanna calibrate first. So on this lens, I'm gonna go ahead and choose our focus first. So I'm gonna move the camera where you can see what's going on. And then on the side of this remote, I'm going to hold the focus button for a couple seconds and wait for it to start calibrating. So what just happened there is the system went through the entire throw of that lens to find the stops. And at the same time, it realized there's another remote connected or another motor here, and it told it to go ahead and do calibration. So now our iris and our focus is ready to go. That's it, guys. Now I can go ahead and start changing my focus. And what I love is it'll map the hard stop beginning and end of the lens to the hard stop beginning and end of this knob. So no matter what lens you're using, your focus controller will always be the same. A couple other little things you'll notice is when I go quickly and stop at the other end, it kind of does a nice slow down. So you can see I'm just whip it, let go, and it kind of eases off instead of smacking the hard stop. It's going to protect your lens over time. And the same is true of the little iris rocker on the side of this remote. So not only do we have a nice knob, but we also have these little rockers here. So I can go ahead and change my iris, as you can see there, my aperture, and it's working beautifully. Now let's say you get everything set up and you start playing with your focus and you realize it's backwards. Really simple. All you have to do is look at the back of the remote for this handy little chart here that tells you how many taps do what. And we can change our motor rotation by tapping it, I believe, 7 times, and that will go ahead and swap it. So another nice thing is if you're mixing and matching Nikon, Canon, Rokinon lenses, you can go ahead and make sure that it's always going to rotate the same direction on the remote. So now I'm going to actually roll on this camera here. I'll fire it up and show you how to do simple A and B setups. So what we're going to be doing is setting A, setting B, and then no matter how I turn this focus ring right here on the remote, it'll always start or stop on either A or B, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead, fire this up, find something more interesting to look at here. So all we have to do to get this to work is focus on something. I'm going to choose the camera in the distance there, and then on the side of the remote, go ahead and tap focus 1 time. That's our A setting. And now let's go back to this remote. That'll be kind of fun, right? So right there, and I'm going to tap focus 1 more time. Now we have our A and B. So as I turn this ring, I know no matter how quickly, I don't have to look at it, when I get to the other hard stop, it's always going to stop at our A point, which is the camera there in the distance. I can just nonchalantly focus the other direction, and it will stop on our B. To reset it, all you have to do is tap focus again, and now it's completely reset and you can change things up again. Really simple, not rocket science, and I love that about this system. When it comes to noise of the motors, these things are dead silent. There's just a very faint hiss, but you really have to listen to it. I'm right next to it, and it's really quiet, so not going to be an issue for sound at all. So that's great to have for your sound guy. With each of these motors, you have a couple speed options, which is pretty awesome. You'll notice that the light here is solid red, so that means we're at a nice slow speed. We're rolling right now, and I can show you how slowly I can change my focus. You might not even notice a change. I'll go ahead and rotate the camera here. Maybe that will help. Just keep an eye on that focus ring there. You can notice I'm just barely turning the lens ever so slightly, which is great. Same with our iris here. I can grab that little rocker and just barely and slowly change my exposure there. Really nice. And if you want to make that a little faster, because this is the top speed, as fast as it'll go, we can go ahead and tap the button on the actual motors here 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3 different speeds that you can change depending on if you're going to be doing whip focuses or you just want really granular control. You've got all the options, which is just awesome. So that is the system, how to use it, a couple basic features. There's a lot more to explore if you're going to be picking this up, including the iPhone app and having a ton of control and settings with that. But what I really love about it, and at the end of the day, why I really would recommend it, is that it's simple, which is much more my style. Instead of something with a billion buttons and menu systems, you literally have 3 devices that you connect to the same channel, and then you've got colors. You tell this one to be blue, you tell this one to be also blue, and you're good to go, which is just awesome. The auto calibration has worked perfectly every single time. Do keep in mind, if you don't have a cinema lens that has hard stops, you can still use this system. There's a method to get it calibrated. So if you have like Canon L lenses and you want to use a system, you totally can do that. It's just one extra step. A couple things I didn't like, or really one big one, and that is trying to remember all the various tapping and on which device you have to tap how many times. Can be really daunting at first and just take time. Luckily, on the back of the remote and each of the motors, you have a little layout telling you tap once for this, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times to do all these different things. Once you figure out how that works and with the ones that you're going to be using more often and most often, it's not really a problem, but it does take a decent amount of time to learn that. And I found myself constantly looking at that, counting the dots. Okay, I got to tap it this many times. So a little finicky, but on the flip side, that eliminates having big menus, multiple buttons, and keeps things kind of clean. So I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I'm excited about how easy it is to set this whole thing up. If I want to tear it down, I just power everything down, unplug the D-tap, and I actually just take the entire rod off this rig and just throw it in a bag, which is just awesome. So that has been the review of the PD Movie Remote Air 3. If you want to learn more about it, check out the links in the description. Otherwise, you can watch fresh videos here at DSLR Video Shooter every single Tuesday and Thursday with live streams on Wednesdays. That's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.